All right, deep divers, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. You know we're about to dive deep into some crazy political intrigue. And for today's deep dive, we've got this article from the Daily Beast titled, Jared Kushner's Shadow Role in Trump's Transition Team Revealed. And, let's just say it's juicy.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're about to step into a political thriller.
Right.
Okay.
So much going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We're going to unravel the mysteries of a potential Trump 2024 transition team. And I'm already sensing some major plot twist.
Oh, for sure. Just from reading this article, you can tell there's so much more to the story than meets the eye.
Absolutely. So, what are some of the things that jumped out at you?
Well, the article kicks off with this whole quiet influence angle, highlighting these figures working behind the scenes to shape events. It's like a political chess game, and we're about to see who's making the moves.
I like that analogy, a political chess game. So who's our first player on the board?
Well, it seems like the first move is being made by none other than Jared Kushner.
Jared Kushner. You know, Trump's son-in-law. The guy who's supposedly all about his investment firm these days, Affinity Partners. But according to this article, he's also playing advisor to Trump's 2024 transition team. Talk about multitasking.
Right. I mean, how does he even find the time?
Seriously.
And here's where things get really interesting. Affinity Partners, the firm that Kushner's running, it hasn't exactly been a roaring success for its clients.
Oh.
Yeah. But it's somehow managed to pull in billions in investments from some pretty interesting places, like Saudi Arabia and other government funds.
Okay, so now we're talking. That definitely raises some eyebrows. Makes you wonder, what's the real agenda here? Like, is there something else going on that we're not seeing?
It certainly makes you think. It's like, what's the motivation behind these investments?
Right. Okay, so we've got Kushner, our man of mystery, working his magic in the shadows. But who's he advising?
Well, the article introduces us to Howard Lutnick, billionaire CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, which is a major financial services firm. And get this, he's also the co-chair of Trump's potential transition team.
Whoa, okay, so this guy Lutnick, he's a serious player.
Oh yeah, he's not messing around. His goal is to assemble a team that can implement the MAGA agenda from day one. And it seems like he's looking to Kushner for guidance.
Interesting. So it's almost like Kushner is the architect, Lutnick is the builder. And they're trying to construct this political powerhouse.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
And what's really interesting is that Lutnick seems to really value Kushner's insider knowledge. The article says he's asking for recommendations for potential appointees, specifically people Kushner worked with during Trump's first term.
So it's like he's saying, hey, you built the first one, help me build the sequel.
Exactly.
But there's this one detail that really stood out to me. It's Kushner's advice to Lutnick on how to handle potential candidates. He's suggesting presenting Trump with multiple options for each position and letting Trump make the final call.
Based on,
well, let's just say personal preference.
Oh yeah, that's a really telling detail.
Right. What do you think that tells us?
I mean, to me, that just screams control and strategy. It allows Kushner to influence the selection process without appearing to dictate terms. And it also gives us a little glimpse into how a second Trump administration might operate.
Like, what are we going to see? Familiar faces?
It's definitely possible. We could see a lot of the same people from Trump's first term, people chosen for their loyalty rather than their experience or qualifications.
Oh, okay. So speaking of familiar faces, where are Ivanka and Jared on the campaign trail these days? They were front and center in previous elections, but this time around, they're practically invisible. It's like they vanished into thin air.
Yeah, it's really noticeable. Remember, Ivanka introduced her father at the Republican National Convention in both 2016 and 2020.
I do.
This time around, they were just part of the family entourage. It makes you wonder, what are the priorities now? Are they deliberately distancing themselves, or are they busy pulling strings behind the scenes?
Right. It's like they're playing a game of political hide and seek. Okay, so we've got secret advisors, shadowy investors, and a power couple playing hide and seek. But wait, there's another big name that pops up in this article, Elon Musk.
Oh yeah, now that's interesting.
Right.
So apparently Lutnick has been chatting with Elon Musk, who, by the way, has been a vocal supporter of Trump's campaign.
He has.
And he's even called for some pretty drastic cuts to the federal budget.
Wow.
Yeah, so that adds a whole new layer of intrigue to the situation. We've got tech titans, financiers, and political operatives, all swirling around in this power vortex.
That's like a political hurricane.
Yeah.
And we're right in the eye of the storm.
Exactly.
Hold on tight, deep divers, because this deep dive is about to take a sharp turn down Wall Street. Get ready for some high-stakes financial maneuvering.
It's crazy how much this whole thing reveals about what a second Trump administration might actually look like. We're seeing echoes of his first term for sure, but also some really interesting potential shifts.
Right. It's like they're taking the Make America Great Again playbook and like adding some new chapters to it.
Right.
We've still got those familiar themes, loyalty over expertise.
Right.
A huge focus on that MAGI agenda, which, by the way, is all about putting America's interests first.
Yeah.
Often through protectionist economic policies and,
Yeah.
A tough stance on immigration. But now we've got these new players like Lutnick and Musk shaking things up.
Exactly. And, it's the influence of people like Kushner and Musk.
Yeah.
And this tension between Wall Street interests and the MAGI movement, these are all elements that could, totally reshape the political landscape if Trump gets back in the White House.
Okay, so let's break this down even more. We've got Lutnick, this Wall Street billionaire, potentially having a ton of power in a Trump administration, an administration that's built its whole brand on this populist messaging,
Right.
railing against elites, promising to drain the swamp. Doesn't that seem a little, I don't know, contradictory?
It's definitely a fascinating contradiction. You have Trump, whose whole political identity is rooted in this idea of fighting for the working class, standing up to the establishment, rejecting big money in politics.
Yeah.
And then you have this Wall Street titan potentially calling the shots.
Right. It's like on one side, you've got the MAGI base,
Yeah.
who are super skeptical of Wall Street. They see it as part of the problem.
Absolutely.
And then on the other side, you've got people like Lutnick, who represent that more traditional Republican establishment
Yeah.
with these deep ties to finance and big business. So how do you even begin to bridge that gap?
That is the million-dollar question. I mean, it's possible that Trump just sees this as a pragmatic move. He needs people with experience to run the government. And Wall Street definitely has a lot of experienced people.
I guess that's true.
But it also risks alienating his base,
Yeah.
who might see this as a total betrayal.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yep.
And then you've got the wild cards, Kushner and Musk. These guys are not your typical political players.
Definitely.
They're operating outside the normal channels, using your influence in ways we've never really seen before. What kind of impact do you think they could have?
Well, that's what makes them so fascinating. Kushner's already shown he can get things done behind the scenes.
Yes.
And Musk is known for his disruptive and unconventional approach to, pretty much everything.
Yep, that's fair.
So they could be a force for huge change, pushing the administration in all sorts of unexpected directions, or they could just use their power for their own personal gain.
Right.
It's hard to say for sure, but their presence definitely adds a whole lot of unpredictability.
To an already very unpredictable situation.
Exactly.
It's like we're watching a political thriller unfold in real time. We've got secret advisors, shadowy investors, Wall Street power brokers, and a tech mogul who loves to shake things up. Where does it all end? And what does it mean for everyday Americans?
That's the question we all need to be asking. How are all of these power dynamics going to play out when it comes to actual policy? Will a potential second Trump administration put Wall Street's interests ahead of the working class? Will Kushner and Musk have too much influence?
These are all really important questions to think about. It's clear that a potential second Trump administration would be anything but predictable.
I think that's safe to say.
We're probably going to see a mix of those familiar themes from his first term, but also a whole lot of unexpected twists.
For sure.
It's going to be a wild ride, folks, and we'll be here to help you make sense of it all. All right, deep divers, welcome back. We've been going deep into this Daily Beast article. You know all about Trump's potential transition team, and it's a pretty wild ride.
It really is. We've got secret advisors, shadowy investors, Wall Street intrigue. It's like a political thriller.
Right, like what's going to happen next?
Who knows, but it's definitely going to be interesting.
So, okay, we've broken down the article. We've talked about the key players. We've even explored some of those potential conflicts that could be brewing. But now I want to step back for a second. What are the big takeaways here? What should our listeners be paying attention to as all of this unfolds?
Well, I think one of the most important things to keep in mind is this tension between the populist MAGA base and that more traditional Republican establishment,
Yeah.
especially those with ties to Wall Street.
Right.
I mean, we saw a little bit of this during Trump's first term,
We did.
but it could become even more pronounced in a second term.
What do you think that is?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the economy.
Yeah.
The country is facing some serious economic challenges.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think a lot of Trump's base is looking for someone to blame.
Right.
And Wall Street is an easy target,
What?
especially with someone like Lutnick potentially having so much influence
It's like a political tug of war.
Exactly.
On one side, you've got the drain the swamp crowd, and on
Yeah.
the other, you've got
Well,
the swamp.
yeah, pretty much.
And then you've got those wild cards like Kushner and Musk, who are kind of playing their own game.
Totally. They're not bound by those same rules. They could really disrupt things.
Or they could just make things even more complicated.
That's true, too. I mean, their influence is a real wild card. They could push for some really big changes, or they could just use their power to benefit themselves.
It's hard to say.
It really is.
So what does all of this mean for the average American? Like, how might a second Trump term actually be different from his first term?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, we
Yeah.
might see more of that America First agenda, that
Yeah.
focus on economic nationalism, deregulation,
Yeah.
a more confrontational foreign policy.
Okay.
But we could also see some shifts.
Like what?
Well, maybe a bigger focus on fiscal conservatism,
Okay.
which would make sense with someone like Musk having influence.
That's true.
Or maybe a more isolationist foreign policy.
Interesting.
A lot of people are tired of those endless wars.
They are.
So, yeah, it's hard to say for sure what a second Trump term would look like.
It is. But it's definitely something to think about.
Absolutely.
All right, deep divers. That's going to do it for this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking content, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. What are your predictions for a potential second Trump administration? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep.